The Dark Brotherhood have pulled off the impossible. On the brink of destruction, they came through and completed the assassination of Titus Mede II. The guild questlines of the Elder Scrolls IV Oblivion, in one way or another, seem to be completed in the canon, whether it was completed by the protagonist or someone else. Regardless, someone became the new Archmage of the Mages Guild, and someone took on the mantle of the Grey Fox, etc. and so forth. So it seems fair to assume that by the time of Elder Scrolls VI, the guild storylines of Skyrim will be completed in the canon, whether that be by the Dragonborn or someone else for headcanon's sake. But where does that leave the Dark Brotherhood? They have been crippled, or perhaps even destroyed, but let's assume they haven't all been killed off. You have the Listener, Nazir, Babette, and a few fresh apprentices, and maybe also Cicero in the Dawnstar Sanctuary. They are a shadow of the Tamriel-wide organization that slowly collapsed over the second half of the Fourth Era. And since we won't be having an Elder Scrolls VI set in the land of Skyrim, it would seem that another Assassin's Guild of another province will have to step up to the plate and provide the murdering experience for the player character. Now, this is under the assumption that there will not be another huge time skip between Elder Scrolls V and VI. Consider that the Elder Scrolls 1, 2, 3, 4, and various spin-offs such as Shadowkey and Battlespire all took place in a 50-ish year period. Skyrim was a massive change, a 200-year time skip to freshen up the political landscape and play with some interesting changes, which was cool. But now we have set up so much in Skyrim, especially with the Thalmor Empire dynamic. It would be a shame to have them time skip so far ahead again and miss out on seeing an independent Hammerfell or a feuding High Rock in this period. I personally don't think they will skip too far ahead, maybe 10 years tops, but that's just my guess. Maybe even going on concurrently with Skyrim or just after. Regardless, in either of these scenarios, the likelihood of the Dark Brotherhood stretching and expanding to Hammerfell, High Rock, or somewhere else for the Elder Scrolls VI is pretty low without some kind of contrived explanation. It took them centuries to build to the point where they had sanctuaries all over Tamriel, so it would seem kinda silly to have them in the span of a few years or even a decade to turn from 5-ish people into a far-reaching organization once again. It's not even like they can have recruiting posters and be public about it. They are a covert organization. On the other hand, it's also reasonable to assume that Bethesda will just put them in as the Residence Assassin's Guild simply because they are a fan favorite and are recognizable. But that isn't always a good idea. Take the Brotherhood of Steel and their appearance in Fallout 76. It's all a bit contrived and they exist in the game solely for brand recognition. So instead of developing a new and interesting guild, expanding the universe, they just rehash the universe into a new location. Anyways, the point of all this is to have some fun speculation about a new Assassin's Guild for Elder Scrolls VI, under the assumption, perhaps naive assumption, that Bethesda won't just worm the Dark Brotherhood in there, but instead come up with a brand new Assassin's Guild. So for Elder Scrolls VI, from the little teaser trailer plus various story speculations, in addition to the political climate at the end of Skyrim, it seems that either Hammerfell or High Rock are the likely settings for Elder Scrolls VI. Hammerfell has the whole independence thing, which would be fresh, playing a game without the Empire running the place, and there's also the Thalmor tension there, as well as the Crowns vs. Forebears thing. Then there is High Rock, which with the popularity of Game of Thrones might do quite well considering the possibilities for courtly intrigue and kingdoms vying for power. Perhaps it's both, who knows. But let's have a look who could potentially replace the infamous Dark Brotherhood. What brand new guild could give the player a new experience? Let's first have a look into Hammerfell and explore some possibilities. So for starters, we can try to have an assassin's faction without such an edgy kill for the sake of killing flavor. Most assassins in history, or organizations of assassins in history, have been highly politically motivated and had causes that transcend I kill for the sake of killing. And personally, it's one of the reasons I find the Morag Tong more compelling than the Dark Brotherhood, because they have a unique microculture and function within Dunmer society. Don't get me wrong, I do love the Dark Brotherhood, and that mindlessly evil character can be fun to play, but I think there are new avenues Bethesda could explore, ones that don't feel like a Fable brand of evil. I'd rather a guild with reasonable goals and motivations, but you know, it can also be on the darker side. After all, it still comes down to being paid to kill people, so we don't want to change that aspect, killing for gold, making a living cutting throats. So let's have a look at Hammerfell right now in the 201st year of the Fourth Era. They are independent from the Empire, they beat out the Thalmor, and there are two major political factions, the Crowns and the Forebears, which as of recent times have been fairly united in their opposition of foreign forces. The Red Guards themselves are renowned for their martial prowess, they are masters of the one-handed blade, specifically curved swords. These scimitar slashers have a proud warrior culture, and in addition, they have an unfavorable opinion of magic. However, they make practical exceptions for things like destruction and restoration, but I imagine the arts of illusion, conjuration, and necromancy are far from liked. When we combine these two factors, you can see how assassins, especially those employing shadowy magics, would be hated. Honorable warriors would despise sneaky assassins. So for an assassin's guild, I figure it would be on the fringes of society, covert, not quite like the Morag Tong situation, where they're almost related to the justice system, integral to the functioning of society. It's also unlikely we're going to find any specific gods in the Yakutan pantheon that cherish assassins, but I have an idea, so let me know what you think. You know how the Dark Brotherhood worships Sithis as the Dreadfather, and he is the embodiment of chaos? Well, in the Dawn era, Sithis created himself a soul called Lorkhan, the opposite to Auriel. Well, the Yakutan version of Lorkhan is Sep. In Yakutan mythology, Sep convinced some of the other gods to create an alternative to the Walkabout, which was the creation of Nirn. Walkabout, by the way, is the process by which the Yakutan gods live through the Kalpic cycles, but I don't want to dive into that and derail this video. Sep is punished by Tall Papa, the equivalent of Akatosh/Auriel, but we could base an assassin's guild around the ideals of Sep, a way to transcend an easier, perhaps sneakier way of avoiding the difficult, somewhat exclusive Walkabout process. The assassin's guild could reject all the Yakutan pantheon's beliefs and way of life, instead believing that Sep did the right thing and that Tall Papa was/is a tyrant. This could form their religious and microcultural anchor from which they base their actions. So by being diametrically opposed to most of the traditional Yakutan gods, which form the basis of Redguard culture, you can imagine these assassins would be opposed to the society, both the crowns and forebears. Their motivations could be targeting high priests, kings, and queens, spreading dissent amongst the priesthood, and infiltrating society with this alternative view of the god Sep. Perhaps they could gain a lot of traction by targeting the lower classes, who are vulnerable to this ideology since they have been discarded by the higher, holier classes of society. Perhaps this is one of the ways to join the guild, through lower class connections in slums of the main cities. Perhaps this is where the guild sets up its satellite hideouts. But of course, the main conclave, the main base of operations, has got to be flashier. It's got to feel awesome too. So what better place to have some epic ancient tomb hideout in the middle of the Alakir Desert, a place where no one can reach them, a central hub where the disciples can spread from. And of course, imagine the assassins themselves in all kinds of wraps and decorated cloth, with curved daggers and all kinds of Moroccan, North African, Egyptian, Berber-inspired aesthetics. A cool plot point could be an alliance with the Dark Brotherhood for mutual goals. Perhaps Nazir, the Dark Brotherhood assassin, has come to Hammerfell for a target, which also happens to be your target, so you team up for a common goal. This way you get a little nod to the Dark Brotherhood, perhaps a hint of how they're doing in Skyrim, giving you that little fan service but without robbing you of a totally new guild to experience. So overall, you have the guild that fits the province with unique motivations, tying them into a bigger picture. You have a unique cultural viewpoint challenging the status quo. Then you also have cool Redguard assassins with awesome tattoos and wraps and curved blades and sand magic, with their main secret base of operations being some ancient, hidden tomb in the Alakir Desert filled with traps on the inside, Indiana Jones style. You could even have sentries in the surrounding desert that jump out of the sand like spiders ready to attack intruders. And on top of this, you still get to kill people for money, and of course the assassins would perfect their art so they can achieve their goals. I just think a guild like this would be awesome, especially since they would feel very interconnected with the society and potentially the overall meta plots involving Lorkhan, etc. and so forth. There's a lot of potential here, but I could go on forever and into way more detail, but perhaps another video. Now, I want to have a look at High Rock. What assassin's guild could replace the Dark Brotherhood here? One that is contextual to the land, society, and culture. High Rock, as far as we know, is still under the control of the Empire, with the various Breton kingdoms as vassal states. This is a place of feuding lords, backstabbing, courtly intrigue, conspiracy, war, and essentially all things you would expect from a plot in the Game of Thrones. In fact, it was a Breton Nightblade from High Rock that slit the throat of Tiber Septim himself, robbing him of the Thumb. High Rock is a location which I think would instead instead benefit from some kind of Assassin's Guild that is more neutral, less politically motivated, just because of the complexities of the province. An intermediary for nobles to employ would be perfect, especially since they don't want to be seen organizing the assassinations of their rivals. Now, you may argue that the Dark Brotherhood fulfills this role, but we are looking to replace them with something new, and also consider that the Dark Brotherhood by nature is a more evil vibe guild, and being associated with them would be quite the poor political statement, and perhaps conflicts with individual noble or religious integrity. One idea I thought could be cool is to have an Assassin's Guild born out of the local Reachmen that centuries ago would invoke the powers of Hircine the Hunter so they could track their prey being the Breton nobles that opposed them. But centuries since, the Reachmen were beaten and the guild drifted into more of a cult to Hircine and took members from the Breton lower classes, and eventually fast forward centuries more to the modern time and you have a guild devoted to perfecting their skills as hunters. So there could be some cool Reachmen motifs in their architecture and gear, but the difference here is that it would double as a hunters guild and an assassin's guild. So they can have a public face as a hunters guild with some kind of hunters lodge as a base of operation, and there are your basic people who join literally to just be hunters, to hunt game and such, but there is an inner faction that takes the hunt to new levels and provides a means of assassination for those with the coin, usually wealthy nobles. This way, if a noble were to interact with them, it would seem they are merely involved with the Hunter's Lodge. There is all kinds of potential here, all kinds of cool castle assassination missions, convoy ambushes, but also spread throughout some hunting of great and powerful creatures to honor Hircine in secret. This could be an awesome opportunity to also involve something with the infamous werebores of the area. An alternative idea could be to do an Assassin's Guild that formed from a certain trade, something with a lot of Freemasons vibes. You could have a guild that was originally founded in the interest of mutual protection. Back in the day, it would make sense to kill off your stonemasons and architects who knew all the secret passages and weaknesses of your castle so they couldn't blackmail you or let your enemies know about it. But let's say these fellas created an organization to protect each other from betrayal by their lords, and eventually this grew into a secret organization of masons that protected one another and traded secrets to a central covert faction that could, if they wish, reveal secrets and manipulate the political climate. And this grew and grew and grew over the centuries to a point where this secret society involves itself in all forms of political manipulation, forgery, framing, assassination, spying, etc., etc. It'd kind of feel like joining the Illuminati. Could be awesome, and many of the main missions could fulfill that desire to assassinate and infiltrate while also providing a different kind of experience. Anyways guys, I'm just throwing some ideas out there and I'd love to see what you think. Also share yours down below. It's fun to speculate and make up guilds, but in all likelihood I think Bethesda will figure out some way to put the Dark Brotherhood in there for sake of fan service, but hey, I love them too. Ideally there would be the Dark Brotherhood and also other Assassin's Guilds, but we can talk about that another time in another video. Thanks so much for watching guys, my name is Scott from FudgeMuppet and I'll be back to nerd out with you again next time.